Welcome to Doctor's Housecall. This is your chance to get in gear with Dr. Gear, a duly trained naturopathic medicine doctor and doctor of chiropractic, board certified in family medicine and minor surgery. Brought to you by Payson Health and Wellness Center at 801 East Highway 260 every Tuesday afternoon from 5 to 6, live on KMOG. You can call in now and speak to the doctor at 474-2427 with any questions, or after the show, call Dr. Gear during regular office hours, 474-7409.
Well, good evening. Mike Farrell here with you, and welcome to Doctor's House Call, coming right into your home or car tonight, and we'd like you to participate. If you can, just give us a call. Any question you have on a medical ailment or problem you have or question, 474-2427. Keep that number handy. If you're out of state, call 928-474-2427. Now, Dr. Gear, good evening.
Well, howdy, Mike, and hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. Boy, it sure is a pleasure to be here with you today. We got a show for you. It's something that we're doing the impossible. Of course, we do that all the time, don't we? Eugene Robertson and his wife, Melissa. Eugene has palsy and Parkinson's disease, and, oh, heavens, he had a lot of problems. Spine injuries that resulted in tremors and shaky hands, a shuffling gait, slow brain function, smart but not quick like he used to be before starting our care. With our guest, Eugene Robertson, owner of Gene Screens, and his wife, Melissa. Hi, Gene, and hi, Melissa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Gear.
So, Eugene and Melissa, will you please tell our listeners, why did you decide to come to Payson Health and Wellness Center for your evaluation and treatment?
We started listening to Dr. Gear and Dr. Weimert on the radio show when I was cooking dinner, and I saw Gene just trying to decline, and his health wasn't getting any better, and I took the action to make the appointment to come and see Dr. Gear and Dr. Weimert.
What did you see about his health that was declining?
I saw his memory declining. He couldn't remember things. The medication that he was on, sediment for Parkinson's, was making him not think clearly.
How long ago did he start having the Parkinson's symptoms, and when did you start the medication?
We started the medication about 1.5 years ago, and the Parkinson's, he was diagnosed with it 3 years ago.
So you went 1.5 years without any medication?
Yeah.
Was it hoping it would get better? Or?
We were hoping that it would get better, but it didn't really help. And then his doctor put him back on the medication. And then I started reading all the labels on the medication and the side effects. And I thought, I'm done. I'm not going to go this route. I need help. And that's when I called Dr. Gear and Dr. Weimert.
Over at the Payson Health and Wellness
Yes,
Center. Yeah. So what happened when you came in to see us? What'd we do with you guys?
Well, you took us in. You did an assessment with us. First, you
Did I evaluate you first?
Yes, you did.
Took a history?
Yes.
Did we ask for x-rays?
And we did the x-rays.
Did we get the myovision testing done?
Yes, we did.
All right.
Yeah.
And did we do the IgG testing for food?
Yes, we did.
All right. So we did a few things first before I gave him an adjustment.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And what did we find on the x-rays?
On the x-rays, well, we found trauma from him falling years ago.
Years ago trauma.
Yeah,
very important to find that.
Yes, it is.
And then to work at getting rid of that, because that interferes with blood flow.
Yeah, the whiplash. I mean, I know that he had whiplash from falling years ago, too, so.
Right. So how old is Gene? Do you mind telling us?
How old are you?
I'm 69.
Maybe you have to talk closer to the microphone.
Yeah, 69 years old.
So 69 years ago you were born. What
Yeah.
part of the country were you born in?
I was born in South Carolina.
Oh, good old Southern boy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what did you eat for breakfast back then?
Back then, it was grits and eggs and bacon or sausage. Good home-cooked food.
Yeah, all that good food, yep.
Yeah. Well, when we're brought up, we think it's good food.
Well, it was the food you had to eat at the time. Now, when we took and evaluated you as a child and took your blood and sent it to the lab and found out what foods you made antibodies toward, then we would know you couldn't have those because they start tearing down your health. It's pretty important not to eat the foods that you make antibodies toward. Melissa, do you remember how many foods were on his list that he couldn't have?
On the IgG test, there was 16 foods that he couldn't have.
Yeah, so, Gene, what were the foods that you wanted to have that you couldn't have because of the test?
There's a bunch of them. I mean, I grew up drinking milk and having ice cream and stuff like that.
Oh, my goodness. No ice cream.
Well, it's made with milk.
Milk causes a lot of congestion. In fact, if you want to put a baby to sleep and the baby has a little allergy against milk, you give it milk, it poisons the baby's brain, and the baby goes to sleep. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's
And
very
if you warm up
interesting.
that milk, it'll go to sleep faster. So it might be a good idea to test children and find out what they make antibodies toward, because it can certainly make them obsessive compulsive or attention deficit. I absolutely understand that because of my own problems as a child. I couldn't sit still. I always had to sit on the edge of an aisle so that I could get up and walk. Couldn't hardly keep my mind on any one thing at a time, so I do 20 things at once. That's typical of a brain that's under attack, under assault. And we have to learn not to do that. It's a learning process, but it's also a process of learning what not to put in our bodies. So after we did that, saw the x-rays, saw that he had old trauma, and we saw that his myovision testing showed him really unbalanced, was it? You remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
Quite unbalanced in his functioning of his body.
Yes.
More one side than the other, and top to bottom, and everything was jumbled up.
It was jumbled up.
Yeah. I probably said he's kind of schizophrenic here. He doesn't know which side of the body to use.
Right.
Right. So we learned a lot, didn't we, in a short time?
Yes.
And then we started in treatment. And you say, well, why were we giving adjustments of the spine and changing diet for Parkinson's disease or tremors? Did you ask that question in your mind?
I did. But I have a good feeling why. Because you have to eliminate all the inflammation. Food causes inflammation.
That's right.
And so you have to eliminate the foods that Gene doesn't react to very well.
Right. And there's some bacteria in the intestinal tract that make molecules that the brain needs to function. Dr. Wyrick's going to tell us a lot about that in a little bit. Glutathione and other things. So we're going to have to try and keep him from getting too technical. But with his background of education, he just slips right into that all the time. But we'll work on it. I know I have to work on it too, because when I joined Toastmasters, when I was about 2 years into, just a year into my practice career, I joined Toastmasters and I gave my first speech, and I told everybody about the spine, and I said subluxation this and subluxation that. And when I finished my talk, he said, oh, your speech was great, except what's subluxation mean? I thought everybody knew what subluxation meant. Subluxation means it's a joint that's not working right and affecting the way the nerves work. And much later on, I was able to explain it much better, because when the bones get twisted, they affect the blood flow. They affect the lymph drainage out of the hole between the vertebrae, and then that stops the nerve in the hole from getting its nutrition that it should have. And there's a pressure that builds up in that nerve, and then the arteries and the veins in the various organs in the body, depending on which level of the spine we're dealing with, will depend on which organ it is, can't get their blood flow right because the nerves that come out from between the ribs and in the neck and the lower back work opposite the nerves that come out of the skull and the tail. And the nerves that come out of the pelvis and the skull are called parasympathetic. The nerves in the rib cage are called sympathetic. It's like two kids on a teeter-totter. They have to work together in order for the blood flow to work in proper circadian rhythm throughout the body. And if it doesn't, we end up with various diseases, depending on where the problems are and what the genetic predispositions are and what the injuries were. So there's a lot of things that we have to look at. But it all comes back to get the spine fixed, get the diet fixed, and make sure you don't have stinking thinking. And stinking thinking means you think about something and you keep thinking about the same thing and you don't fix it. And you keep perseverating. My wife told me what the word perseverating means many, many years ago because she was involved with children and adults with learning disabilities in Arizona. She was on the officers of the organization, and I was involved with evaluating them to find out what foods they could and couldn't have back then, long before we had the blood test available. So what we had then was the applied kinesiology testing, which is where I test with muscles, strength, resistance, with the aura of the body.
Right.
You know what the aura of the body is, Melissa?
Yes, I do.
You happen to be a massage therapist in the background.
Yes, I have background in massage therapy.
So that helps you out working with Gene here and knowing what to do at home, in addition to getting him into the office over at Payson Health and Wellness for us to work with him.
Right.
Yeah. So we've worked through quite a few things there. And then as we got the structure changing, we had Dr. Wyrick work with his chemistry.
Yes.
And Dr. Wyrick, would you like to explain a little bit about what you did with his chemistry to start changing the way the brain cells are working inside the skull?
Okay, so where to start? Let's start with the concept of neurotransmitters. These are chemicals that are made inside the brain that make the brain work properly. And there are a number of different neurotransmitters. Most important for our discussion here is dopamine and also serotonin.
Are those molecules, chemicals, natural, normal for the body?
Yes, they are required for the brain to function. And the body requires amino acids to make these neurotransmitters.
The amino acids are protein.
Amino acids come from proteins.
So you have to digest your food properly.
So you have to have protein sources in order to make neurotransmitters. But the problem with Parkinson's disease is the part of the brain that makes dopamine starts suffering from inflammation and the cells die out, so that the brain can't make as much dopamine as it did previously. So in treating Parkinson's disease, the naturopathic approach is, number one, to reduce inflammation, and there's two approaches that we can take most directly to reduce inflammation. One we've already talked about, which is the IgG food test, to remove foods which promote inflammation. And each person has different foods that are unique to their own biochemistry that promote inflammation. So we have to figure out which foods are a problem. The other major approach to reducing inflammation is to make sure that the body has enough of a particular peptide, which is another kind of molecule that serves as the master antioxidant in the body. And that this master antioxidant which reduces inflammation, is, what did you say was produced in the gut?
Well, the glutathione.
Yes, the glutathione, and that is made from amino acids as well.
But you have to have a bacteria to make that in the gut.
Well, it's also made in every cell of the body if you have enough of the precursor amino acids to make the peptide.
In other words, if you're eating a proper amount of protein, and does that protein come from vegetables? Is it okay? Or fruits, is it okay? Or does it have to be meats?
Ideally, you should have a balanced mix of proteins. So meats in general are automatically balanced, but the vegetable sources of proteins are different than the natural human balance, but by proper combining of vegetable sources, we can get balanced amino acids in the body. For example,
if we have good bacteria in our gut, and we're not killing it with eating foods that we have IgG responses to, and we don't have the inflammation from that, and we have the good bacteria, then we're going to start having a better chance of digesting those proteins and putting them into proper form to get into the bloodstream to be used.
Yes, but here's the rub. When we start to try to treat Parkinson's, the mainstay treatment is to give the patient extra amounts of a certain amino acid called L-DOPA. And that causes the body to consume more of the glutathione. And the gut bacteria can't keep up at that point. So we have to add extra glutathione into the system, either directly or by giving the body extra amino acid precursors.
It's so wonderful having you with all of your education in the office to work with me, because you know all those pathways and all the interactions that those molecules take with each other.
Yes, you go into my office and you see on my wall a hodgepodge of little scraps of paper that I've put together to explain to myself the various metabolic pathways that are involved in the brain.
I have x-rays and you have biochemical diagrams.
Yes.
And it's important. That way we work together to help a patient. So with Gene here, what did you find going on with him that needed a little bit of our attention biochemically?
Well, the main thing is we determined that he is low in dopamine. And so the question is, how can we help his body make more dopamine? And the short answer is give him L-DOPA. But the longer answer is, when you give a patient extra L-DOPA, it causes imbalances in other neurotransmitters and depletes the antioxidants. And so we have to play a balancing act of, as we give L-DOPA, we have to add other amino acids to the diet as well in extra amounts that you don't normally get from food.
So one of the most important things we have to look at also is how well is he digesting the food that he eats.
Right.
Is the liver working good? Is the pancreas working good? When we look at a person and we check out how that functioning is going, 16 foods he makes IgG antibodies toward, says he's not digesting his proteins very well, allowing those rogue proteins to get into the bloodstream and wreak havoc, and the body puts out a protective barrier of mucus along the lining of the intestinal tract, and that interferes with the absorption. So there's a whole lot of things involved in this.
Yes.
And we look at the spine to make sure that nothing there is interfering with the blood flow in the pancreas and the liver when they need to have the blood flow for digestion purposes.
Yes, many moving parts to the puzzle here, and they all interact.
And so it's important to be able to look at the whole picture.
Yes.
Not simply, oh, you have pill-rolling Parkinson's disease hand movement. Let's give you L-dopamine and take care of the problem.
Well, here's part of the problem with just giving L-dopa. L-dopa has side effects, which are especially nausea. That's the worst side effect of L-dopa.
Now, is L-dopa poisonous, or is it that it uses up nutrition in the body the purpose of neutralizing the extra
It uses
amount of
up
L-dopa?
nutrition, but it also affects other neurotransmitter balance. So your serotonin, for example, which is important neurotransmitter, goes out of whack, becomes depleted when you take L-dopa. So we have to add back in extra serotonin.
On the one hand, it does good, and on the other hand, it does bad.
Well, it's a two-edged sword, and so what we have to do is either take the naturopathic approach of balancing these other components, or we can take the allopathic approach of adding to the L-dopa another drug called carbidopa, which has all kinds of other side effects.
We can put other drugs in there to do that, can't we? If we're doing it the allopathic way.
But the L-dopa, the only way to control the L-dopa side effects without balancing the other amino acids is to add carbidopa. And carbidopa basically poisons every enzyme system in the body that uses vitamin B6. And it has its own side effects, and there's good indication that it accelerates the progression of Parkinson's by poisoning the B6 pathways.
Wow, what an intricate system that is.
Yes, but
No wonder, Melissa, that you didn't want him to get into all that.
But that's what Sinemet is a mixture of L-dopa and carbidopa.
Right. Now, Gene, put the microphone over here for Gene. Gene?
Yes.
How did you start feeling with your treatments with your spine? Did you notice some changes? We had to help you on the table in the beginning, did we?
Hey, you had to help me on the table. You had to help me off the table. I was dizzy.
You had a shuffling gait?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Couldn't walk very good?
I was dragging my left foot more than... So it's just... It was a very tough time for me to remember what I'm trying to do here. So, but...
Well, you're doing pretty good right now.
Anyway, I can't think.
You're starting to run out of some juice up there in the brain right now?
Yeah.
I understand that. There's a certain amount of biochemical utilization for thinking process, and you're using it up right now, working with us here on the radio. And Melissa, how long was it with Gene that we've been working with him now?
We've been coming to your office for 7 months.
And in that 7 months, now you see Gene sitting here talking on the microphone right now. How long has it been that he's been able to talk that good?
It's been about seven months. Last week I noticed it. His talking has been better. His appetite has been better. Just in the last week,
Okay.
I've noticed those good changes.
So 7 months ago, he couldn't talk like this at all.
No,
He was talking very slow.
and very quiet. You could hardly understand his.
Right, he had all the symptoms of Parkinson's disease.
He did.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm going to digress for just a moment here. And Gene, I'm going to give you a chance to relax for just a moment. You don't have to think right now.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, 45 years ago, I had a patient, and I've had lots of patients of this nature, but this was a classical patient. I mentioned her on the radio show a couple of times. Her name was Minabelle, and she was about 70 years old at the time, and she had age-related mental decline, and it was rapidly advancing. She constantly forgot the names of her pets. She got lost driving the neighborhood she lived in for years. She could not wash her dishes, nor could she vacuum her floor correctly. She was not able to think about how to fill out forms correctly. and she was unable to do the daily tasks necessary for her job. That was being a wife, a dream career she'd held since her late 20s. Melissa, does this sound anything at all like Jean?
Yes, it does.
Amazing, isn't it? So she was terrified she'd die alone in a nursing home, incapable of functioning, with every treasured memory of her life completely erased and gone, because that's exactly how her mother had passed a few years earlier. So Minabelle's husband wanted to take matters into his own hands. He brought her to us to see if we could reverse her brain health decline. That action saved her life. Because if it wasn't for the brain health breakthrough we provided to her, including what we're talking about today, she would not have returned to better mental health and become the functional woman she did in just 2 months of treatment. Now, the difference between her treatment approach and Jean's treatment approach was we brought her into the office. This is when, back in years ago, when we were doing what we call intensive day care. I had hospital beds in my office, and I would bring a patient in at 8 in the morning, and I would keep them until 5 in the afternoon. And I would put them through treatment all morning, and then all afternoon we'd go through another set of treatment, just like we did in the morning. And we were making certain that we had her diet straightened out at that time. And I had a medical assistant hired just to take care of her. So it was personal care in the office all day long, morning to evening. Oh, what a beautiful time that was to take care of patients, because I saw lots of patients like this at that time. We were able to change their lives wonderfully well. So, 73 years old, Minabelle enjoyed laser-sharp focus, incredibly clear thinking, boundless energy, and her memory became better than it had ever been. She was able to do her taxes, vacuum her floors, wash her dishes. She lived another whole year or more at that time in good health mentally, where she wasn't previously. So by the Center for Disease Control's estimates, declining brain power is lying dormant in at least 13.8 million Americans. Isn't that a large number? It starts as simple brain fog and fatigue, 15 to 20 years before its more destructive, heartbreaking effects begin to take hold. Jean, when did you get injured? You remember what age you were when you got hurt pretty bad in your spine?
No, I can't remember back that far.
Melissa, do you remember?
I remember him telling me that he was a truck driver for 10 years on the road, and there's a strap in the back door, and he was grabbing onto it to shut the door down, and the strap broke, and he went backwards on his back, flat on his back. And that I remember. So
did it jangle his brain a little bit?
Yeah, I would say so.
Did you see a change in personality at that time?
Not too much. No, Yeah.
He was just as ornery as ever?
Oh, yeah, he's still ornery.
When did you two first meet?
I met him in Lake Havasu in 2002.
Okay. So that's 18 and a half years ago now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So in that period of time, he changed from being a robust cross-country truck driver and ex-Marine, or you're never an ex-Marine, are you?
No.
What'd you do in the military?
I wasn't in the military. I applied for the military when I was 18 years old, and they turned me down for high-frequency tone deafness, so I was very upset about it, because there's got to be something in the military that somebody with high-frequency tone deafness can do. But I try to do what I can other than that. So.
Well, you've been a fighter all your life.
Yes, sir, pretty much.
Yeah, trying to do what you could do, no matter what happened or what came before you. So, if you've ever been embarrassed because you couldn't remember the name of an old friend, or dumbstruck when you completely forgot what you were saying in the middle of a conversation, when your mind just goes totally blank, if you've ever felt frustrated, confused, and angry because you keep losing track of your car keys or forgetting important appointments, directions, and phone numbers. Well, Melissa, I recommend to the people out there that are listening to us that they take action as soon as possible and make no mistake, there is a solution. So the real problem Dr. Wyrick mentioned, he said it's the fraying connections between your hundreds of billions of brain cells. Like an ancient rope bridge falling apart at the seams, the connections between your brain neurons slowly wear away, getting worse as time goes on. These connections wear away until memory fails completely. As our brain's networks, pathways, and connections begin to unravel over time, we experience more and more of these slips of the mind. But it doesn't have to be this way for any of us. Here's the good news. The scientific breakthrough reveals how we can not just protect our brain against the synapse-shattering assault of aging, but slow, stop, and even reverse the declining health of your mind. Your brain can be a bubbling spring of vitality no matter what your age. So recent studies in neurology reveal the gradual wearing out of your brain's connections can be reversed. And Dr. Wyrick has been explaining to us the biochemistry of that, and I've explained to you about the structure of the body and how to get blood flow back in and get it going. Melissa, do you think that we're talking truth here?
Oh, you are. You guys are. I mean, if I wouldn't have taken action to bring Gene into the office, he probably would be in a home right now, because there's no way that I could take care of him.
He was getting pretty bad, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
he was getting really, really bad.
And think if you'd have been able to bring him in a year and a half to 3 years earlier, when he first started having the symptoms, instead of waiting that length of time.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Wyrick, you want to jump in on that?
Yes, I was doing a patient intake with Gene today, and he said his back hurt a little bit, and I asked him why. And he was out working all day yesterday, so he's able to continue working when he sounds like he was pretty much a basket case before he came in to see us. And so it's more than just reducing symptoms. It's actually restoring life.
That's it, isn't it? Gene, what kind of work were you doing yesterday?
I have a screen business, and my wife and I were the only ones in this area to do screens for houses. And yesterday I had a patio screen door that your customer called me and wanted it fixed. So I worked on it, took it back over to his house and installed it. So with my kind of work, I'm up and down a lot. So, and when my back starts to hurt, I try to relax and do what's going to be best for me.
So what happened was you used your back, you came in today, I gave you an adjustment, broke up a lot of that congestion in your back, and how'd you feel after the treatment today?
Well, when I get done with the treatment, I always feel a whole lot better. It's like starting off fresh.
Stimulates the blood flow, wakes up the nerves, and it makes you feel like you're young again.
Yeah, that's about the way it is. I mean, it's hard to say. You have to experience it before you really know what it's going to do for you.
Boy, they're right from the horse's mouth. You're a horse, aren't you?
Well, some kind of horse.
You're a thoroughbred horse. That's what you are. All right. So we test the functions of your body, starting with the alignment of your anatomy, which impacts the circulation of food into your brain and waste out of your brain. Then we look at what really food is for your particular body and what it recognizes as poison to its existence. Those are the things that we do in the beginning with every one of our patients, no matter what the manifested disease is. kind of important to look at the whole person. We also have this test that we do called an S3 test, where you put your hand on a little laser-type instrument, and it tells us how in general terms, how your fat metabolism is. Because there's a molecule, a biochemical molecule, that puts color into vegetables. And when we eat our vegetables, we get that color into our body, and it's stored in the fat pad of the hand, in the fat cells, and this machine counts the number of molecules in there, in a certain prescribed area. So there's a set number of molecules that you have to have in order for us to know that you've got a good digestive system for fats. At least it's suggestive of that. There's a lot of other things that are involved, but this is one more tool that we use to find out. So the diet affects that, supplements affect it, that's dietary supplements, your body fat levels, and your lifestyle. And then the last thing, your genes. Hi, Gene. But your genetic is what we look at as well. So, Dr. Wyrick, what is Parkinson's disease?
Well, it's a disease that affects part of your brain that controls how you move your body. And so the main symptoms are problems with moving smoothly. It can come on slowly so that you don't even notice it at first. But over time, what starts as a little shakiness in your hand can have an impact on how you walk, talk, sleep, and think.
So you got to look at these things and start early on that. Don't wait.
Yes, the sooner you start, the more effective the intervention will be and slow down the progression. So you're more likely to get it when you're 60 or years old or older. It's also possible for it to start when you're younger, but that doesn't happen as often.
Now that's the symptoms.
Right.
The condition often starts out early in life with injuries.
Yes, and it slowly progresses, and our body has a tremendous ability to compensate until at some point the damage becomes so great that the body can no longer compensate, and then we start seeing the symptoms.
That's why they say there's no cure for Parkinson's disease. So you get treatment to support and help manage the symptoms. Well, we could cure a certain amount of the stuff that created the Parkinson's disease,
and
some of it's already done.
And we can roll back the clock in many cases and slow the further progression. These are all things that we can do, but totally eliminating Parkinson's disease so that no further therapy is necessary, we can't do that.
Well, we could if we got to it in the very, very beginning. The body could still compensate around it. But if we wait until we get the pill rolling in the hands, it's pretty hard to stop it then.
Yes, because a large percentage of the neurons have been lost.
So what does Parkinson's do to the brain, Dr. Wyrick?
Well, deep down in the brain, there's an area called the substantia nigra, which means literally black stuff, which is where the dopamine is made. And it is in a part of the brain called the basal ganglia, which control motor function. Some of the cells in the substantia nigra make the dopamine, which is a chemical that carries a message around your brain. So when you need to scratch an itch or kick a ball, dopamine quickly carries a message to the nerve cell complex that controls that movement. When that system is working well, your body moves smoothly and evenly. But when you have Parkinson's, the cells of your substantia nigra start to die. There's no replacing them, so your dopamine levels drop and you can't fire off as many messages to control smooth body movements. Early on, you won't notice anything different. But as more and more cells die, you reach a tipping point where you start to have symptoms. This is what I meant by you eventually decompensate. Your body can no longer compensate for the loss. It may not be until 80% of the cells are gone which is why you can have Parkinson's for quite a while before you realize it.
So Parkinson's affects the body. The telltale symptoms all have to do with the way you move. You usually notice problems like rigid muscles. Gene, you had rigid muscles. And we still have a problem with your rigidity of your muscles. Some days it's worse than others. You recognize that? Sometimes it's easier for us to move your arms and your legs, and sometimes it's much harder. In the beginning, it was really hard.
Yes, Gene's flexibility has much improved.
Right. So Parkinson's and arthritis go hand in hand. Arthritis of the spine from injuries affecting the blood flow. So with rigid muscles, you get slow movements. Simple acts like buttoning a shirt take much longer than usual. And that's because you're not getting good blood flow into the spinal cord in your neck, as well as what's going on up in the brain. But in your neck, you got to have good blood flow in order for the fine muscle coordination to button a shirt. It has to have that blood flow in the neck to take place. If you don't have that, because of compressioning of the spinal cord due to old injuries, then it becomes hard to do fine muscle coordination. You get tremors. Now, the one really good thing to look at with tremors is, do you have the movement of the body part, the hands generally, without thinking about it? When you're just sitting still, are they still moving? Or does the tremors come on when you're reaching for something, or when you're going to do something like writing? So we have the Parkinson's type tremors, and then we have intention tremors. That's the term that I learned for intention, for the kind of movement that is irregular movement when you're trying to find something. Spine circulation is important to handle both types. But if we get the spine circulation back, and when you have truly intention tremors, we can almost 100% reverse that with correction of the spine and with proper diet, etc. Parkinson's, we can make a difference, but it depends on how many of those cells are left in the substantia nigra. And that's why it's so important to get to this condition early instead of late. So walking and balance problems. Oh my. Gene, when you first came to us, you practiced the shuffle dance.
I was good at it. I was good at it. That's why I practiced.
Melissa, tell us about Gene's ability for body movements 7 months ago and how they're different today than they were at that time.
Well, back 7 months ago, he would walk and his gait was very stiff, and sometimes he would lose his balance and he would fall. And he's not doing that anymore. He just keeps improving all the time, and it's just wonderful to see that with him. Yeah.
So he's beginning to take longer steps, is he now?
Oh yeah, he outruns me in the grocery store. He wasn't doing that 7 months ago. Yeah.
I outrun you because I want to get out of the grocery store.
So there's a lot of other issues that can happen with Parkinson's. Depression, bladder problems, acting out dreams, maybe a while before the abnormal movements start. Does Gene have a change in his bowel and bladder function with the treatments that we've been giving him?
I have noticed that they are better. Yes.
Definitely better.
Yes.
Gene, do you get up at night? Do you wake up at night and have to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, I do. A good night, I only get up once. Other nights, I get up 4 or 5 times.
So getting up 4 or 5 times might be because you overused your body during the day and things are not functioning as good as they should. And when you get up only once, maybe you didn't use your body as hard that day.
That's quite possible.
And Melissa, have you noticed anything in those symptoms related to the days that he gets his treatments in the office?
What was the question again?
When he gets treatments in the office, which is spinal manipulation treatments and the therapies that we do to help the blood flow, have you had an opportunity to notice that those nights he's less restless?
Yes. He's more, he goes to sleep and he stays asleep until he has to wake up in the middle of the morning and use the restroom.
So he may only use it once those nights?
Right, yes.
And whereas the other nights, he might have to use it 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Right, yes.
So the adjustments of his spine help normalize his body function.
Right, I've seen that.
Exactly. That's pretty important. So we don't want to wait, for the causes of Parkinson's to destroy the brain cells. We don't want to wait for the injuries to the spine to interfere with blood flow to the spinal cord. We want to get those taken care of. So we go in and physically move the bones, one to the other. Getting relaxation of muscles is important, but getting the bones to move so that the physical obstruction to blood flow is reduced is very important to take care of these chronic diseases. It makes a big difference. Dr. Wyrick has become proficient in working with acupuncture as well as working with the activator for those people who are fearful of having the spine physically corrected. But Gene, do you like your adjustments?
Yeah, I do. It's a challenge to me every time I get the adjustments done, but I kind of look forward to, because when I'm done, I feel so much better.
You remember in the beginning how difficult it was to get any joint to release its fixation?
Oh, I remember. I remember the pressure you put me under just to begin with. But I knew that everything that you did was going to make it that much better, so I keep coming back.
You don't have any problem coming back to get to full treatment?
Oh no, whenever possible I'll get it done, because like I said, when I'm done, I feel so much better.
That's great. And Melissa, you notice the same thing with him, how he works so much better after he gets his treatment?
Yes, I do. I noticed a big difference. He can get off the table by himself. He doesn't need any help getting off the table after the treatments. He's walking down in the office, passing people, and he's ready to get on his day.
So what other treatments besides manipulation have we been doing for him?
You've been doing the diathermy treatment and the G5 on Gene, and
both of which are designed to increase blood flow in the spine. The diathermy works by increasing heat in the spine and spinal cord. And the body says, I don't want it to be that hot, so I'm going to bring in my blood flow to cool it down. And that's how we force circulation in the spinal column. Then the G5, that's a heavy-duty oscillating type of instrument that people call a vibrator, but it doesn't vibrate, it oscillates. And by oscillating, it moves lymph fluid. It actually moves it. And so it reduces swelling, and by reducing swelling, it makes room for food to get into the tissue where the swelling was blocking that exchange of food for waste. So, the prevailing opinion in other doctors is that they don't know why the brain cells start dying. They think it's a mix of your genes and something in the environment. But the reason isn't straightforward. Someone could have a change in gene tied to Parkinson's, but never get the disease. That happens a lot. And a bunch of people could work side by side in a place with chemicals linked to Parkinson's, but only a few of them end up with it. It's a complex puzzle, and scientists are still trying to put all the pieces together. But we put it together in our office by looking at the spine and seeing how it's affecting, and looking at the digestive tract and seeing how it's affected. So it's old-time naturopathic medicine, old-time osteopathic medicine, old-time original homeopathic medicine. And Melissa, you studied all those things when you were into your massage therapy.
I did, yes. And that's why I was drawn to your office, because that's how you guys work.
Restoring the body to function.
Right.
Instead of trying to cover up the symptoms.
Yes.
Yeah. So, there's no one test for Parkinson's. We look at it and saying, where is the problem originating? What part of the body's function is not working properly? We know that we can't fix what's already dead in the brain, but we know we can fix what's not yet dead in the brain, and there's a certain amount of neuroplasticity that can take place. And Dr. Wyrick has done an intensive study in neuroplasticity. That's a big word. What does neuroplasticity mean, Dr. Wyrick?
Well, we used to believe that once a brain cell was dead, it was gone, and you couldn't get any back. But we're learning now that there are certain mechanisms in the body that help regrow tissue if we can take away what are called the obstacles to cure. So as long as you're in a boat that's leaky, you can bail water, but you can't it's hard to keep the boat afloat. But if you can plug the leak, then you can gain progress in bailing out the boat. And so neuroplasticity is the concept that neurons, brain cells, have a limited ability to regrow if whatever was causing them to die off is treated and removed as a problem. And there are certain herbs that can, we're beginning to believe, can cause the neuroplasticity to accelerate. And so those are all on the table with Gene and other patients that have a variety of different neurological problems, including Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's in many ways are similar, and they're also different, but there are many similarities, and so many of the same treatments are applicable to Alzheimer's. And I have a special interest in Alzheimer's because I have relatives that died from Alzheimer's.
How do you die from Alzheimer's disease?
Well, in the case of my mother, she became confused about how to dress herself, and she fell over and hit her head trying to put both legs into one pant leg.
So it's the effect of the Alzheimer's,
yes,
that allows a person to have some kind of an injury or some sort of a biochemistry that will cause their early death.
Yes.
It's not Alzheimer's itself that kills them.
Well, I think that in some cases it progresses to the point that body functions are affected. But
so a person goes into a coma and then they die?
Usually it's some secondary cause, but it's exacerbated by the lack of mental faculties.
Right. Like in Gene's case here, the Parkinson's wasn't going to kill him, but the lack of a body ability to move could cause him to fall down some stairs and hit his head and die.
Or in many cases, advanced Parkinson's, the ability to eat and swallow is lost, which can be a major impediment to continued life.
Right. Well, those are very rare cases as far as we're concerned. I know they're very common for a neurologist who deals with that day in and day out, and that's their whole patient load. But we get patients well before they get to that stage, or at least we get them to where they can at least function without getting into that stage. So while there's no cure for Parkinson's disease, we get really good treatment to manage it all, and it works so well. So well. I've seen so many hundreds of people. You know, if anybody's listening out there that has these chronic diseases and they're taking 2, 3, 5, 10, 12 drugs, maybe they'll start taking a look at how the body's working. Come in. We've got free consultation. I just saw 2 people today, young people, 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, because their mother said, I want you to know, to find out exactly why my son has to take these drugs for his attention deficit disorder and his hyperactivity. And I want to know why my daughter is having all this pelvis pain. She fell on some roller skates and landed right on her butt. Now, that was about 3 years ago. The son, I checked his spine. The left side from his shoulder blade all the way down to the pelvis was so tight I couldn't feel anything underneath the tissues alongside the spine on the left side. On the right side I could feel various lumps and bumps and such, and I won't technically talk about that, but it was interesting to see how he's all shifted and twisted one way. We want to change all of that. So they're going to get the IgG testing to find out about foods. They're going to get the x-rays to find out what's going on with the spine. They're going to get the myovision testing to find out what the function is like. And then we've got a starting point. We know where we're going to begin their care. I've had thousands of people like that. These were 2 young people, teenagers. A mother who's caring, who says, Dr. Gear, I want your type of medicine. Just like you, Melissa, when you said that about Gene. I want your type of medicine because we want to take care of the problem. We don't want to just treat the symptom. We want to find out what's really going on. And whatever we can do to change it now, we want to change it now, because it won't be nearly as bad tomorrow if we change it now. And Gene, you've shown us wonderful changes in 7 months. Think of what it's going to be like in 7 years.
You can only look forward to it and hope for the best. But if it progresses the way it's been going, I think it'll be wonderful.
And that, my friend, is from the horse's mouth. He's exactly right. I'm so pleased that we're able to be helpful to you, Gene, and you too, Melissa, because we're giving you back your enjoyment of life by having him be more functional.
Well,
that's
like
a wonderful, wonderful blessing.
Mike,
it looks like we have reached the end of our show. We have a little bit of a announcement here. We need to have everybody understand we do free consultations. Just give us a call at the office. That's 928-474-7409. And you talk to the receptionist. We're in the office Tuesday through Saturday, and you can call her and make an appointment for consultation. We want you to bring your imaging with you, any lab tests that you might have concern about. We'll go over them with you. It's about a 15 to 30 minute consultation that we do. It's worth quite a bit of money, but we're not charging you for it. We want you to know what is available. And if you say, no, I'm not going to do that, we say, okay, that's fine. It's your life, and you're entitled to live it the way you want to live it. So, Gene, thank you so much for being with us. Melissa, thank you for bringing him to us, giving us a chance to help him. Mike, thank you so very much for having this Doctor's House Call, and I love your new website.
Right. Just go to that website for a copy of this program, by the way, KMOGcountry.com.
That's wonderful, wonderful that you have that.
All right. We'll see you next week. Same time, same station.
You've been listening to Doctor's House Call, aired every Tuesday afternoon from 5 till 6 p.m. To call Dr. Gear after the show during his business hours at Payson Health and Wellness Center, 801 East Highway 260, call 474-7409 or go to his website, drbobgear.com. That number again, 474-7409.